Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Gloves Off. I'm your host, Tara McGowan. I'm also the founder and publisher of Courier, a network of independent newsrooms across the country. And in this week's episode, I want to talk about the unprecedented level of corruption we are seeing that is very much on the surface with the Trump administration. We hear a lot about the word oligarchy these days, and for good reason. Trump and his administration have literally turned our federal government into a pay-to-play grift. These tech bros are essentially running our country. They're running our government, being able to pay off the president to get whatever they want. They are running our media, acquiring legacy and new media platforms where they can censor our speech on a whim and they are running our economy with inflated investments in AI, data centers that are wreaking havoc on local communities, and all of it just to be able to amass more of our attention, to sell to advertisers, to make more money. I wanted to talk to somebody who knows these individuals really well, and that's Tara Swisher. Tara has interviewed every major CEO in the technology sector for the past 25 years. She has observed them up close. She has read their books. She has heard their treatises. She understands, to the degree anyone could, what exactly their end game is. And she has covered the decisions that have shaped not only our economy and the future of technology and innovation in America and around the world, but also our democracy. Long before it was popular or safe, Tara has been warning us about how tech power was quickly becoming political power and world power. And as we are experiencing that shift right now, I think Tara's voice is more important than ever to help us understand how we got here and to peel off some of her really surprising but contagious hope. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Share it with your networks, and don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube so you can be the first to know when conversations like these drop. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. This is Gloves Off. Joining me today is Tara Swisher, a prolific former journalist, reporter covering Silicon Valley, big tech, who now has two, not more, right? Incredibly popular podcasts.
I do a lot of different things.
Tara, really excited to talk to you about those individuals
Thanks for having me.
because every single horrific thing that's happening in our country around the world right now connects back to Silicon Valley and
Yeah.
a lot of these really terrifying individuals.
Some of it, yeah.
Because of how long you have been covering Silicon Valley and the rise of big tech, and how just integrated it and the people behind it and controlling these massive companies and now media platforms are integrated into our foreign policy, our domestic policy, the way our government runs, the corruption in government. Did you see this coming? Like, what has surprised you about where we are today?
I wrote about it quite a lot in 2019 and before that, about the use of, how partisanship had been amplified and weaponized. I wrote in a column in 2018 in the New York Times. Oddly enough, I found a Wikipedia entry where I had predicted the insurrection because of a lot of this stuff that was being organized online, and said, "What if Donald Trump doesn't win the election? He declares it a fraud and gets his users gets them ginned up online to go attack something in real life," which is exactly what happened. So, you saw the growing power of these companies, and then you saw them moving to Washington to take control of things rather than disdain Washington, which they had done in many previous decades. And instead, they came here just like a pharmaceutical company or Hollywood or any manner of financial services firms comes to DC to get to exert influence, except they had 100 times the money and 100 times the data that the others had. So yeah, I kind of did.
Yeah, and to that last point that you just made, they do have more wealth, more resources, more power, and it seems like more immunity and more control.
That's the issue. I mean, talk about walking down Fifth Avenue and shooting someone. They have Section 230, which had protected them from legal liability. And they had enormous, they had enormous power over our communications and now media systems in ways they never did before. And so they were, consolidating control with media, with money, and with influence. And that, and they were disdainful of Washington, but then they figured it was cheaper just to try to influence elections and manipulate people. And Trump is the perfect vehicle for that because he's a coin operated president and he understands the trade off. And so that's what they're doing. And some of them actually did transform politically, but most of them really just want to make money. They don't really care about anything else. I don't think they care about civic issues and that's as a whole. Individually, some of them might more than others, but I think mostly they think they're doing the right things and therefore the way they see the future is the way we all have to live in their world that they're building.
And is that like a product of just all of that concentration of wealth and immunity and power that like they are so deeply out of touch? Because like we talk about out of touch with like Congress and politicians
Sure.
and stuff, and you and I know a lot of those folks intimately well, and like
Mhm.
that, like it feels different. This feels like a different level
Well,
of
I think when you get to be that level of wealth and power, you think everything you do is correct. And it's sort of a godlike complex. And they already thought they were smarter than everyone else. The reason we have our systems or say our transportation systems is not due to the best way to do it. It's the way that these people wanted to do it. And that happens in the building of cities and the building of everything else. They just have more means and more money and they're integrated digitally as well as now online and offline and online to our society. And they're making determinations around politics and society and how we live. And they don't have full control because it breaks through, but they certainly have a lot.
it's why we have a democratic system of government or why we aspire. Because they're not conservative either, right?
Peter Thiel certainly was conservative the whole time. He's the only one who hasn't changed. Still the loathsome character he's always been, but he's always been like that. So there's a couple of them that were always conservative, but the level of conservatism in Silicon Valley was more like Meg Whitman, who was your traditional conservative, or John Chambers, or stuff like people like that. But not this. Not this is something else.
Yeah, and now they no longer have to go through sort of the paper pushing or the bureaucracy of the government, even when it was ineffective or weak.
Oh, it's for sale.
Do you think that collectively or individually, like none of them see an end game for society? They just see an end game for themselves?
I think they just think they have the best ideas of where to go, and that democracy is a nuisance. They run their companies like monarchies, where they have, just look at the way the stocks are. Mark Zuckerberg can't be fired ever; his children can't be fired, and so they run their companies like that. So that should give you a clue to how they think.
With now sort of none of the illusion of
Hmm.
accountability or checks and balances or
Hmm.
rule of law around, like, does that change what they even imagine is possible? Like, what happens to our society?
Well, as I told one of them many years ago, you're going to either have to do something about income inequality or armor plate your Tesla, and that's what they want to do. They want to armor plate their Teslas. They don't mind living in a less and more society. They don't think people make good decisions. They don't. They have a disdain. You've seen them say it over and over again. They say it too. They want to go to Mars. They don't want to stay here, and they pretend it's to save humanity, but it's really to save them and theirs versus the rest of you. They're not hiding anything here. They're just carrying out what they said they wanted to do. And they do believe they're better. They're so arrogant. And, they're better at some things, that's for sure. But certainly, I mean, look at the Washington Post. They're not better at media. That's clear. I don't know. Maybe their parents didn't hug them enough as children. I don't know. They won't remain the overlords forever, as history also shows us.
What role do you think the Epstein files could have in that potential catalyst? Now that so much of the information has moved out of the conspiracy theory circles into the mainstream and will continue to with more of the files released, it's not like new information.
I knew they had gone. Their wives had told me. Their wives had said this. That was creepy, Kara. And I'm like, oh well, he's a pedophile. I remember several conversations with the wives. The husbands were completely either out of it, either they knew or they were stupid. I couldn't tell, right? But the wives clocked it immediately. People like Melinda Gates or Ann Wojcicki they clocked what was happening there right away, from what I could tell.
Right, but there wasn't ever movement for real accountability or justice. And I think we are
No.
experiencing a shift in the public consciousness. I hope that it is a catalyst, but also it does connect all of the dots, right? Of the intersection of
Mhm.
money and power and our, the worst demons of humanity or
Mhm.
masculinity.
Historically speaking, it doesn't end well for these types. It never does. So I'm assuming it's going to be the same thing. And eventually, it will settle out. But the amount of wealth is what you have to understand. It's not like these are, who is the richest person on the earth forever was Cleopatra, I guess, right? The amount of wealth here, if you do it in real terms, right? She had more money than almost anybody. But um, the amount of money here is really quite astonishing. Like you're talking about a trillionaire, a possible trillionaire. And that's just never been seen on this planet, like something like this. And then gets to decide what. It has this amazing ability to change things at their behest look at all the damage Elon did with Doge. I mean, think about that. That's just crazy. This incompetent person was able to affect the lives of millions of people because of his bad decision making.
That's right. And there's so much of that happening in this pay-to-play administration that we don't even see it on the surface. There's plenty on the surface.
Oh, it's a lot of it's on the surface. I don't think they're even bothering to hide it, like the corruption.
I don't either. It's more like what can get attention.
Well,
in this environment.
That's part of the strategy, is to create so much confusion and disconnect that it's hard to see what. Just because the right hand's doing something doesn't mean the left hand's not doing something. Like it's an administration of distraction in all aspects. Everything distracts from everything else, and therefore it creates a confusion. And they're attacking constantly. After Minnesota, and it's still going on there, by the way, they were like, oh, now they've backed off. I'm like, they haven't backed off. What are you talking about? They'll pop up somewhere else. It's whack-a-mole. And so that's what they've got the better people engaged in, was an endless series of things on their terms, which is that we've got to get it off their terms and onto the terms of a vast majority of people comparatively.
What do you think are some of the effective strategies right now being deployed to do that, or efforts?
Oh, gosh, it depends. It's cultural issues, like what Bad Bunny did yesterday was brilliant. He created a cultural moment, right? And he was messaging people. That to me is very effective. Messaging is critically effective. Trump is very effective in messaging sort of heinous stuff, but it works, right? And so counter messaging that is appealing and reasonable seems to work really well. Obviously, pushing back legally has been a critical element, but that's tough. Obviously, that it's still hard to do, and you have to keep doing it. And so there's that. The legal stuff is very important. Obviously, it'd be great if regulators got involved, but they're all bought and paid for under the Trump administration. So state regulations and state and governors and things like that can push back. Congress is completely useless at this moment. Mike Johnson's a factotum for Trump. And so is John Thune, I'm sorry to say, because he seems like a more reasonable and smart person. But, reality is reality. He's not going to stay there if he pushes back. But to me, I would push back. Like Tom Tillis suddenly found his balls. Like, were they not there before? No, he was thinking about his next election. And then he did. Then he didn't have to. And then he's like, wait a second here. Like
2028. I mean, JD Vance, I can't imagine anybody liking him for any good reason.
Nobody has the charm and charisma of Trump. And I use charm in a very broad way, but he's very appealing to voters. And so JD Vance, I said he's the political equivalent of a Cybertruck, it's repellent. I find him repellent. I think a lot of people find him repellent. So I think it's going to be harder. He's not going to hold together this coalition. I don't know who that person is, or if there's going to be a person like Trump. And that's their problem, is they got the best, if he's managed to hold coalitions together that are so unlikely, but the minute, and you're seeing the fractures now, the minute he's gone, it's over for that. They'll be fighting each other tooth and nail. Again, something that's happened in history, right? You had, there was a figure, Huey Long, in the United States, who was gaining enormous power, and he was assassinated. But in that case, he was starting to really coalesce a lot of different people around that were unlike each other. And so, question is, does JD Vance have the charm and charisma to do so? I think he's anti-charisma. So I think that's a problem. So who is that person? Is there, who's the person that's going to come and do this? Marco Rubio seems charmless. We'll see. We'll see who's going to be their standard bearer. They certainly have to pay attention to Trump going forward, no matter what, because he'll continue to have his grip, and because he'll become crazier and crazier as he gets older and older. You're gonna have, like a figure you're not going to be able to avoid, unfortunately for them. Democrats don't have that.
Well, I think that's also one of the more compelling reasons why they would never let go of power. Are you starting to see any of the Silicon Valley or AI giants start to hedge a little bit away from it, or they're just still so immersed in enjoying?
No, they will do what's in their interests. You see Dario Amodi from Anthropic say a thing or two, but he's always been like that. Again, just the way Peter Thiel's always been sort of right-wingy, Dario's always been that way. So hopefully he'll stick with it, but they'll try to impugn him. They tried, I think David Sachs tried to run him down. That hasn't worked, Dave. And nice job on crypto, by the way. It's at its all-time lows. Good job.
Do you think public sentiment does still matter?
I do. I think it does, because I'm a history student. And so you see that happen over and again. I do think the rich always feather their nest, and they will till the end of time. So that's not going to change, right? And we'll have a new version or a different version of it going forward. But we do know how the story ends, because it ends the same way every time. This is a very diverse country. It's not, everyone makes the comparisons to Germany, et cetera. And there are certainly a lot of comparisons to be made, but that was a pretty homogeneous society there, right? We're like a lot. We contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman said. And so I think it's harder to do that to this country. You can do it, but holding on to it is very hard. You go through the Salem witch trials, you go through, McCarthyism, you go through America First. The first time, it's happened. It's part of our culture, the way we treated Native Americans, obviously slavery. We have this dark, terrible side of the United States, which for some reason the right doesn't want to even examine. But there's also the other side too, of great expansion, great hopes that other countries don't have. And it's very diverse. And again, I'll go back to the Super Bowl. That was exactly the way that is, to me, what our country is diversity, and it always wins. And in nature, it's this. And the Silicon Valley people know this. There's an expression that Barry Diller told me once when he was talking about Hollywood's inability to innovate, and he said they're so much the same. It's a miracle that children have teeth. The interbreeding. Makes me laugh. Made me laugh. It still makes me laugh to this day.
Yeah, I agree with you on the expansion being something that we always think about and is part of our DNA here, but also like one of the things that has made me be like, oh, I can see a path towards soft secession. I've really come around to that, because it's true. There's so many of us where what we love about the country is what was exemplified in Bad Bunny's performance and the diversity and the richness of the country. And that's the thing that a lot of people hate.
Back to the tech people, the problem is before you couldn't see all of it. And now everybody sees everything and people can respond, and it creates sort of noise versus commonality. And so how do we use technology to bring us together in a commonality? It's really hard. And it's more designed, enragement equals engagement. And so there are ways to bring people together using it at the same time. You could see that. So the question is, what are we going to lean into? The negative aspects of this technology or the positive aspects?
Right. And where are you going to have leaders that you can trust that are focused on that and not just the greed element?
Maybe we don't need those leaders. Maybe there's a very different way of governing that doesn't have to be in this ridiculous money grubbing. It all lends itself to this. The money, the partisanship, the online anger, it all leads to this, but it's not reality for most people. Most people get along really well, actually, or have a lot of commonality. And if we could lean into that, that's the other aspect of America that works really well.
It's going to have to happen from the bottom up. But I do think one thing I was naive about was that, especially like I built a lot of my companies and infrastructure with the help of Silicon Valley money and investors that we both know. And I have been really disheartened by how quickly they have left and abandoned those ideals. I didn't have any reason to believe they didn't when they were putting their money where their mouth was on it to some degree. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it's as much out of fear as it is just about protecting assets. I mean, there's fear obviously embedded in that, but it's not fear of retribution as much.
You can always count on greed. You certainly can.
It's a hard thing to grapple with. on the media front side, right? Because this is the other difference from other things in history is the real consolidation and ownership of media in this kind of environment, in a decentralized environment. Where do you find kind of hope in terms of the right information getting across to people now? I mean, you spend a lot of time talking and are reaching certain audiences and not going through legacy outlets. Legacy outlets are all pretty much broken down, lost trust, or owned by these folks. Where do you see potential there to make sure that people are still informed so they can react
Well, there's a
honestly?
lot of different ways. You can have small outfits like my own, or you can have larger ones that are doing well, like the New York Times, or you can see MS Now trying to reinvent itself in an interesting way. We'll see if it works. They actually make quite a lot of money. So it depends on what size and shape. It just doesn't have to be any shape. It doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be big. Some can be small. Some can be big. Some can be social, some can be, you just have to embrace entrepreneurship in media, and that's a very exciting thing to me. I find that to be really great. There's a quote from John Steinbeck's book, The Grapes of Wrath, which I love. I love that book. I read it in high school, and it was Ma Jode. The Jodes are traveling and they're getting the shit kicked out of them. There's this migrant family, of all things, Okies in this case, during the Great Depression. And the famous line is, "We're the people that live. They ain't going to wipe us out. Why? We're the people. We go on. We keep on going." And that's whether it's poor people, whether it's middle class people. I just feel like there's more of us than there are of them.
I agree. And I only wish more people, and I think it is contagious. I think you have a role in this. I think our reporters do too. But when you speak out and you aren't afraid to do that, I think that can be really contagious. And this is the purpose of this format and this show. And I just have a sense, I could be wrong, Kara, but that you have never given a shit what people thought. And been able to
Again, from that book,
is
is don't have an idolatry of rich people. It's such a mistake. Some are good, some are bad. I'm not anti-rich. I do very well in journalism, but I work really hard. But the same quote from Ma Jode in this book is, "Rich fellas come and they die, and then their kids ain't no good and they die out, but we keep coming. We're the people that live." I agree. I think that it'll just take time. And maybe some of these kids are actually terrific, of these rich people. I know them well. But don't give up. Don't be like hopeless and doom scrolling. Stop it. Put down the phone and do something about it. Whether Scott Galloway is working on this economic boycott, you can protest.
I love
I know.
that.
Well, it's just another way to show you have agency. You have talked to someone. I was just talking to my mom, who's 92 and loves Fox News. And, it's hard to change someone like that. So I give up on that, of course. I'm sort of in the Mel Robbins let them kind of thing with her. But the other day she was going on about something, and I turned to her, I go, "What do you care? You're going to be dead." There something about something that's in the future. I'm like, "You won't live to see that. So you need to sit down, move along." And she's like, "That's not very nice." I said, "You're actively going to be dead. So there's no way you're living for this. And I'm hardly living for this. And so you need to move along." And that's what I always say to people. If it doesn't concern you, let the young people take over. And they always make the best sense to me.
For being so cut and dry, I love your hope and optimism, Tara. It's a wonderful. We have to. We have to. Thank you so much for your time and for continuing to speak out.
All right. Thank you so much.
These conversations and the courage of these leaders are only as contagious as the audiences we reach. So if you felt inspired by this conversation and episode, please consider sharing it on your own social platforms and with your friends and networks. If you don't already, please follow Courier Newsroom wherever you follow news and information, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube so you can be the first to know when our next conversation drops. So excited to be in this fight with all of you. And until next time, please take care of yourselves. We need you.